Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I wanted to credit Josh Seftel with making that video for us. It's such a beautiful video to illustrate such a beautiful space that we're so lucky to have in public radio. And it's all thanks because of community support. So thank you so much. And as you have done tonight, please check out the City Space website, see other events. You can come out. I just saw one on Jarrell Jones that I absolutely can't wait to hear. And if you've been following this story, it was WBUR reporting that really pushed his case forward. He was convicted and spent 32 years in jail, and his conviction was finally overturned. So it should be an incredible event. So thank you for coming here tonight. Let me introduce you and tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Yasmin Amer. I'm a senior reporter here at WBUR. I work in podcasts. And specifically, I work on the Kind World podcast, where we tell stories about profound acts of kindness and how they've transformed lives. So we're not necessarily telling these stories about organizations, even though they do extremely important things, raise money for good causes, but we want to get to really personal stories. I'm talking about stories like the 6-year-old who raised $1 million to cure his best friend's disease, help cure and push that scientific research forward, 6 years old. Or the woman who was determined to get a man out of the airport when he was stuck there for 8 months. So these are really personal stories that show that somebody went above and beyond during a time of crisis. So please do us a favor, subscribe on your Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And moreover, we would really love to hear from you. If you have a story of transformative kindness that you want to share with us, or you've witnessed something, if you've done something for somebody or somebody has done something for you, send us an email, kindworld@wbur.org. We'd really love to hear it. So, as I just mentioned, my job is to tell these deeply personal stories. And when I first started doing Kind World, I was really excited because I was like, okay, the compassion beat. Everybody's going to want to talk to me. I don't have to call bureaucrats and beg them to talk to me about the thing that they weren't supposed to do. But it really wasn't like that. It wasn't just like happy all the time. A lot of the stories we tell do emerge from these really dark moments. And some of them are the most personal and darkest moments out of anybody's life. So they're not always easy to talk about. And that's just it. With hardship, sometimes you come out with these stories of incredible transformation. Transformation through kindness, acceptance, forgiveness, understanding. So I've been really looking forward to hosting this event at WBUR City Space because I think it's a perfect opportunity to talk about all these themes that I've been really thinking about in the last year of producing Kind World. And to do so from a really personal lens. There are almost 3.5 million Muslims living in the US. I'm one of them, and one of the 7, maybe, that grew up in rural North Carolina. So shout out to Thomasville, only shout out you'll get at City Space. Maybe not, I don't know. So even as a kid, I recognized that Muslims were always portrayed with the same tired stereotypes on TV. Bad guys tended to have my parents' accents, and Muslim women were usually portrayed as sheepish and weak, and they were completely at the mercy of Muslim and non-Muslim men. And these stereotypes weren't just confined to whatever fictional tales they appeared in. They really did shape people's views. They shaped the views of my classmates, my teachers, neighbors towards me and my people. And they shaped my views of me, myself, a younger me, of myself. But I think there are still a lot of reasons to stay optimistic. In many ways, I feel like we're finally starting to advance the conversations. We're starting to ask more sophisticated questions than, yeah, is Islam violent? That was a question on way too many cable news banners. The Secret Life of Muslims, an Emmy and Peabody nominated series, which aims to shift this narrative and share real stories about what it's like to be Muslim in America today. So what is a Muslim? That's a very good and not at all unsophisticated question. So I want you to take a listen to how a handful of the 1.6 billion Muslims out there answer that.
What's the weirdest thing you've been asked about being Muslim?
Do I worship a moon god?
Are you allowed to have sex during Ramadan?
I bet you like to hump goats. I don't even know what to say to that.
What's a mosque?
What do you guys really do in there?
The weirdest question is if I'm planning to blow anything up.
Why are you guys like that?
Why don't Muslims denounce terrorism?
Aren't you hot?
Are you circumcised?
I do denounce terrorism.
Really? You guys can laugh? You guys can smile? Oh.
A Muslim is a great many things, depending on your perspective.
Muslim is the word we use to label people that follow the Islamic religion.
And believes in the oneness of God.
And that Muhammad is his messenger.
That's really all that it is. There's no secret handshake. You don't have to run through a gauntlet.
Things like not cheating, not stealing, not killing, not hurting folks are principal to the faith.
We can't eat pork. There's no pork on my fork, no swine on my mind.
A practicing Muslim prays 5 times a day.
I'm not jiggy with the piggy. I'm not aching for the bacon.
Every chapter in Quran except one starts with God is merciful, God is compassionate. Compassion, mercy. These were the 2 concepts.
I'm not hostage to the sausage. There's a lot of these phrases.
I think the question of what is a Muslim 100% cannot be answered. We're talking about over 1 billion people.
People think a Muslim is traditionally basically someone looks like me with a beard, maybe not as much swag because that's unique to me, but Muslims come from all different walks of life.
A Muslim is anyone who says he's a Muslim.
There's all levels of Muslims.
That includes, the secular Muslim who eats BLTs and washes it down with a glass of Pinot.
There are some that are very devout and practicing, and there are some that are not, just like with every other faith.
Nobody in Islam gets to say who is and who is not a Muslim.
God is the one who determines that.
We don't have a Muslim pope, although it'd be cool if we did, and I think it should be me.
If you really want to break down the Arabic word, it literally means the one who submits.
To God.
To peace.
According to my father, a Muslim is any person who surrenders to a force greater than himself. When I introduced my atheist, whitey white, infidel boyfriend to my dad goes, listen, Zahra, the word Muslim just means one who surrenders to a force greater than himself. That's it. Does he believe in gravity? So he surrenders to the gravity. It is a force greater than himself. He's a Muslim. So welcome.
A great majority of us are just ordinary, boring people.
Schmucks like us.
But what do I know? I'm just one Muslim out of 1.7 billion Muslims.
So the creative force behind this video, I'd like to invite Josh Seftel to join us. And I wanted to also tell you, I forgot to say this in the introduction, we are going to take questions from the audience, and we're going to do it through an app called Slido. So if you log into something called slido.com, SLIDO, and put in this code, just type in your questions, and at the end, we just want to make this a conversation. So at the end, we'll read your questions, and you could vote for your favorite questions. It'll be fun. So Josh, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Besides wanting to expose all of our secrets, when and why did you decide to profile Muslim Americans?
And by profile, you mean the good kind of profile.
Sure.
Sure. So I was supposed to be a Jewish doctor. I graduated from Tufts down across the river, and I was, my plan was to join like Doctors Without Borders and go around the world and help people in need. And then my senior year of college, I made a film about my favorite professor. And when it was screened, I met all these professors came to see it. And one of them said, oh, my husband needs a filmmaker to go with him to Romania because he's doing work to help the orphans there. And this was in 1990 when the Romanian orphan story hadn't broken in this country yet. So I went there and I made this film. I was 22, and I came back and put it together, and it was on WGBH, and I shouldn't mention that.
Yeah, no, I actually before you keep before you go any further, I do want to share some of Josh's credentials. So take a listen. He began his career at age 22 with the Emmy-nominated Lost and Found. So that was your documentary about Romania's orphan and abandoned children.
That's right.
And then he did Taking on the Kennedys, documentary It's a Hard Knock Life, The Home Team, The Many Sad Fates of Mr. Toledano, which premiered at the 2015 Tribeca Film Festival and was released by the New York Times op-ed docs. And he also directed the anti-war film War, Inc., as well as the groundbreaking Emmy-winning television program Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
That's where I got this suit from.
Yeah. It's a nice suit. I especially like the shoes that go with it. He's been a contributor to the Peabody Award-winning program This American Life, and his essays and commentaries have appeared on NPR, CBS Sunday Morning, and the New York Times. And now the Peabody-nominated series and Emmy-nominated series, The Secret Life of Muslims. Since launching, the series had more than 50 million views, and Seftel has become an active figure in building bridges between Jews and Muslims in the U.S. So I want to know, like, what similarities did you see between your Jewish community and the Muslim community?
Well, so after I made that documentary, it led to the American adoption of thousands of Romanian children. Yeah. And so that set me on the path where I said, maybe I'll put film school on hold and try this filmmaking thing out. And so I went on and did some of the things you mentioned. And then several years ago, I came across a statistic which said more than half of Americans have an unfavorable view of Muslims. And that statistic brought me back to my own childhood, growing up in upstate New York, in a town where there weren't many Jews. And in fact, it brought me to this specific room in my house where it was a room we weren't allowed to go in. It was our living room. And we were not allowed to go in there. And because it had this beautiful, like, high pile yellow shag carpet. And my mom actually had a rake.
Did your parents keep the plastic covering on the...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They did
Okay,
that, yeah.
that's a thing.
Yeah.
That's a thing with Muslims, too, some of them.
But my mom had a rake, and she raked the carpet, so it would be, like, really fluffy. But she could tell if we walked on it because you'd see the footprints. So anyway, the only time we used it was when we had parties. And usually the parties were other physicians. My dad was a physician who he was inviting over from the community, and most of them were immigrants. So that yellow shag carpet room, I'd look in when I was little and I'd see, like, people in saris, people in hijab, people in, all different colors of skin, and it was like a mini United Nations in there. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, But a few years into it, maybe when I think I was in, like, 7th grade, I remember I woke up one morning and that room, in the middle of that room, was a rock the size of a brick on the yellow shag carpet, and it was, and our bay window was shattered. And I was like, oh, I know what this is. And at school I had been getting picked on, called names, Jew Kike. Jewish Josh. Kids threw pennies at me because they wanted to, remind you that Jews are cheap. And so, and I'd actually forgotten about all this until I started, thinking about this statistic, and feeling like, oh, I get this. I think I kind of get Islamophobia on some level, at least from the vantage point of being a Jewish person. And so that was what set me out to try to do this series. And so I went out, I tried to raise money. It was almost impossible. And then the 2016 presidential campaign started, and there was a lot of rhetoric. And some of the places that I'd gone to for funding reached out to me and said, hey, what's going on with that Muslim project, And I said, oh, I'd still want to do it. And they said, okay, well, we'll give you some funding. And so the first episode of the series, which was, I think, the one you just saw, came out 3 days before the 2016 election. And since then, we've made 25 episodes, And it's just been incredibly popular. And I think that's because people are really hungry for a narrative that reflects reality more than the narrative that they're getting from the news and from other places and from politicians.
I want to know what kinds of stories you were looking for when you initially went into this project. What kinds of stories did you want to tell?
I wanted to tell a range of stories. I mean, first of all, there's no way you can succeed at doing this series, right? Because you're trying to tell the story of a group of people that is 3.3 million. And if you have 25 episodes, that means you have 25 stories out of 3.3 million. So you've failed by far. So it was hard. And we actually had this wall in our office where we had the faces of all the people we were considering, in the series. And someone joked that it looked like the wall in Homeland when Carrie's trying to whatever. Anyway, yeah, it was really hard, and we searched for stories that were about people that maybe you had never heard of, people who were famous. And we've done all kinds of stories. Like we did one about a WWE wrestler. We've done, you'll see 3 stories tonight that we've done that are all very different. There's so many stories, and it's impossible to succeed. But we're still working on. We're doing season 3 soon, and we're like, what do we do next? We still have all these stories to tell that.
There's 1.767 billion of them,
Yep. So
you've got you've got a lot of content. So I do want to share one of those stories you're talking about. This one is about. This one features Mona Haydar and Sebastian Robbins.
These 2 guys were standing behind us, and I'm clearly pregnant, and we've got our 2-year-old, and this guy was like, I wonder what she's hiding under there. I wish I could rip that fucking thing off her fucking head. Knowing that I could hear him.
When Mona and I met, it was 2012. I mean, it's hard not to be corny and sentimental, but for me, it was really love at first sight. Islamophobia just wasn't the thing that it is today. I don't know if I would have converted as readily or as publicly now as I did then. I kind of experience these 2 different cities when I go out now. I spend most of the day with Safi, and the world is just this kind of friendly, great place. And going out with Mona, people are not shy about staring.
Sebastian's like, oh, this is my wife, Mona. People are like, oh, nice to meet you, Muslim lady.
The FBI now believes the massacre in San Bernardino was an act of foreign-inspired terrorism.
Shootings in Paris in 2 or 3 locations.
After San Bernardino and the Paris attacks, it was really intense.
As soon as we heard about the event, there was hardly time to mourn before it was bracing for the backlash.
There was a significant rise in Islamophobic hate crimes.
Just this afternoon, there was a fire at a mosque in Southern California. It is the latest in a string of violence directed at Muslims.
We didn't leave the house for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks.
I had this sense of this kind of blanket of dread.
We felt like we had to do something to replace some of that trauma with love and connection. We were like, how do we get people to talk to us?
Right.
And so it was like, we bribed them with donuts.
I kind of had this idea of Lucy and her lemonade stand, the psychiatrist thing, this very homemade thing. We took our son with us. We took my mom's dog with us, 3 big boxes of coffee and 3 dozen donuts.
So many people were like, don't do it. You're basically putting a bullseye on yourselves.
We set up, and there was kind of this little inhale of, what's gonna happen.
Do you guys want some donuts?
The very first person, this kid walked up, and he said, I just want you to know I'm Muslim, and I think what you're doing is really cool. And I just felt this this kind of tingle.
And the very next woman walked up to us with eyes full of tears saying, I'm so sorry for what your community is having to suffer through right now.
Give you a hug. A lot of people, they'd come up and they'd say, I don't really know what to ask, but can I have a donut? It was like, yeah, you can have a donut, you know. And
some people really asked you, like, where's the
Muslim? I want to talk. I'm like, oh yeah, right here. Yeah. What should I ask you? Like, well, ask us about our son. We're trying to potty train him. Ask us about potty training. Ask us about, you know, the Red Sox.
That exchange meant everything.
Nice talking to you guys.
It was a lot of curiosity and a lot of joy. But after that very first day that we went out, I posted just a picture of us standing in front of the signs that said, keep your heads up, Muslims of America. Friends kept sharing it, and then their friends shared it, and eventually it just went crazy viral. NPR was calling me, and like the Boston Globe and Huffington Post and People Magazine and Al Jazeera.
Mona Haydar wants to fight fear with free donuts and dialogue.
The hashtag Ask a Muslim, it's still going on college campuses and at functions and events all over the country. You know, people will just set up Ask a Muslim. It's that magic connection that I want to be the lasting thing from Ask a Muslim.
Is your dad?
Yeah, that's Ben.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
So Mona Haydar is an emerging rapper, activist, and artist. She's a Syrian American who grew up in Flint, Michigan. She has a master's degree in Christian ethics. I can't say ethics, I'm sorry. Her rap song, Hijabi, was one of 2017's top protest songs and top 25 feminist anthems of all time, according to Billboard. I'd like to invite Mona Haydar to the stage. Thanks for coming. So I really love this idea. This was in Cambridge. You did this, so right across the bridge there. Can I tell you what I love about this idea?
Tell me.
This is like my mother's way of fighting racism, which I love. It's like food diplomacy.
I'm a mom. I don't take that as a I take it as a compliment.
No, part of it. It's not Ask a Muslim, but I'll tell you a very quick story. I remember at my first internship when I was outed as a Muslim, and people, I could tell people were starting to feel like a little uncomfortable. It was a small town, North Carolina. People weren't really familiar. And my mom was like, it's okay. Just take them stuffed grape leaves. It'll be fine. And it really, eventually it worked. Food diplomacy is an absolute thing. But, so I love that you did that. So small things like that, sharing food, kind of coming up and asking questions, do you feel like it helped you connect with people you otherwise wouldn't have connected with? And did you feel like it was your responsibility as a Muslim to connect with them?
That sounds really nice. That it would have been people who I wouldn't have connected with otherwise. But to be honest, most of the people, I would say 99% of the people who came up to us had a Muslim friend, or were curious about Muslims, curious to affirm that they thought what was on the media was wrong. What was, the rhetoric that they were seeing on Fox News, for instance, that they wanted to kind of confirm their intuition that wasn't true. And I want to believe that all the people we talked to, were there because they, had this maybe lingering curiosity or suspicion, and they just wanted to get it out. But I think for me, the reality is the people were just the people I would have talked to on the subway because they were talking to my kid and they didn't have that intense hatred in their heart. So I think food diplomacy is great, but what we didn't say in the video is that, often what we found was people would come up to us and they would say things like, oh, but you guys don't even look Muslim. And we realized that what we're combating is not necessarily Islamophobia, it's racism, it's xenophobia. People, would say, well, you don't look Muslim because my skin looks like this, or my husband has blue eyes and red hair, so.
Yeah. So did you feel like you had to, what made you feel like you really had to set up that stand? What was the moment where you were like, I gotta do something? You talked about it a little bit in the video, but could you go into depth?
Yeah, it wasn't me. I mean, I didn't grow up with like white American Christian privilege, which is a real thing. I studied Christian ethics at Union Theological Seminary. Christian privilege is a reality in the world, where the majority of the world, the ethics, all the laws of this land, they're all derived from Christianity. And so somebody who didn't grow up with that, I would never have had the idea to do Ask a Muslim. Never in a million years. But my beautiful, naive, gorgeous husband was like, hey, like, and he's so gregarious and warm and loving, and he just really believes that that if he just smiles hard enough at people, that they'll become his friends. Like, that's the kind of person he is. So he had this idea, and I'm a supportive wife, so I was just like, okay, I'll come. And I think more so it was therapy for us, that we could go out and do something that was transformative for us, something that allowed us to transcend our period of mourning, something that allowed us to move into a space of action instead of just prayer and thoughts, something that helped us to move into the sphere of making the world that more beautiful place that we know it can be.
You're a rapper, and that's kind of, I don't know if you've seen her videos, but I would highly recommend you look them up after this. But I remember when your song Wrap My Hijab came out, my first thought was, this is hot. And then I just imagine the amount of critique you must be getting from people like all over the spectrum, of people who are not necessarily fond of Muslims, but also Muslims who are like, why are you using this totally American Western thing to express Islam and feminism? So I want you to talk a little bit about what putting that out there was like for you.
Well, I was pregnant. Excuse me. I was pregnant, and for anybody who's been pregnant before, your body kind of becomes public property somehow. Like, people feel like they can like reach out and touch your belly. And I was always really uncomfortable with that. And so what I would do is I would reach out and touch their belly at the same time. And then they would realize real quick that that was inappropriate. They'd be like, why are you touching me? Exactly. And so I had written this song, and I had just come back from Standing Rock. And I was 7 months pregnant, and I just felt in my heart that I needed to do that video right then and there. The song is about loving yourself no matter who you are, no matter where you come from. All around the world, love women every shade. Be so liberated. And I was pregnant. I had a non-standard body type for a music video, specifically a hip-hop music video. And I was like...
What is the standard body type for a hip-hop music video?
Oh, girl, you know what it is. Something hit me, and I hit up Tunde Olaniran, who produced the song and also co-directed the video with me. And I just said, I think we need to shoot this video while I'm still pregnant. This baby's about to drop. Like, let's do it. So I went to Detroit, and we shot the video, and the criticism was crazy. Specifically, like, people had a lot of feelings about me rubbing my belly. Like, dude, have you never seen a pregnant lady before? That's like all we do, like rub the belly. So it was weird from that all the way to the extreme of people being like, well, she's not even a real Muslim because, what kind of Muslim woman does that? Like, I didn't understand that. But then you had people on the other side of the spectrum who were like, she's too Muslim. And I had all of these alt-right wing articles written about me. I was a mouthpiece for ISIS suddenly. And I was like, dude, like, I'm talking about like feminism and women's liberation. How is that ISIS? I don't know. Like, but it was crazy to me because I had people on the alt-right and like Muslims way over there suddenly agreeing on something that I was bad, like that they all hated me. And I was like, whoop, whoop.
Patriarchy's universal. Really.
It is. But I was happy to be uniting people, even if it was like, even if, maybe that's savage of me, but I was happy to be uniting people, even if it was over like...
Mona Haydar, a real bridge, everyone. Thank you so much. I have so many more questions for you, but I do want to transition, and I want to show another one of Josh's videos. This one is about Rais Bhuiyan, so I want you to take a listen to this.
Mark Stroman was on a shooting rampage to kill as many Muslims as possible. As a retaliation of 9/11 terrorist attacks, he killed Waqar Hassan, a man from Pakistan. He shot and killed a man from India, Vasudeb Patel. And on September 21st, 2001, he shot me in the face. As a child, my impression about USA was it's a great country, beautiful country. I remember watching a lot of Western movies for a few dollars more, the good, bad, and the ugly. It was a dream that one day I should visit the wild, wild West and see all those things. After graduating from a military school in Bangladesh, I went to Dallas and loved it. Worked pretty hard, and within like a month, I was working as a clerk in a gas station. It gave me an opportunity to get to know the people, to learn the culture. I moved to Dallas May 2001, 3 months before the 9/11 terrorist attacks. 10 days after 9/11, I was behind the counter. A customer walked in. He was holding a double-barrel shotgun, pointing at my face. I said, "Sir, here is all the money. Please do not shoot me." And then he mumbled a question, "Where are you from?" I was confused and I said, "Excuse me?" As soon as I said, "Excuse me," he pulled the trigger. I felt it first like a million bees stinging my face. And then I heard the explosion. Frantically, I placed both palms on my head, thinking I had to keep my brain from spilling out. I felt that my time was up. Images of my mother, my father, my siblings, and my fiancé appeared one after another one. And I was begging God, do not take me today.
10 days after 9/11, Stroman went on a shooting spree.
Mark Stroman, a white supremacist, wanted revenge and shot 3 clerks who he thought were Muslims.
Here in America, everybody was saying, let's get them.
2 of his victims died. Stroman was convicted of murder and sentenced to death.
I went to Hajj in 2009 with my mother. During the pilgrimage, she was rubbing on my face, she was crying, and I heard my mom telling God that whatever my son wants to do with this life, help him. In my faith, in Islam, it says that saving a life is like saving the entire mankind. Mark Stroman has committed a heinous crime, there's no doubt about that, but all the good things I was taught inspired me, go and do the right thing.
Mark Stroman has been in this prison behind me for nearly 10 years.
As he sits on death row, an unlikely champion is fighting to save his life.
Bhuiyan will be partially blind for the rest of his life because of his injuries. But he wasn't interested in eye for an eye justice.
I went to the U.S. Supreme Court asking for clemency for Mark Stroman, went to the U.S. Federal Court, went to the U.S. State Court of Texas.
For this man to forgive me, which I've done the unforgivable, for him to come forward the way he did, it speaks volume. It speaks volume for the human race.
He wrote a long letter to me. He said that my stepfather taught me some lessons that I should have never learned. I have unlearned some of them, and I'm still unlearning some of them. I don't know who your parents were, but it is obvious they are wonderful people to lead you to act this way, to forgive someone who is unforgivable. On the day he was executed, he put my name on a list of people that he would like to talk. As soon as he came on the phone, I said, "Mark, you should know that I never hated you. I forgave you." And he said, "Rais, I love you, bro." It's the same person. 10 years back, his heart was filled with hate and ignorance. But when he came to know me, he saw me as a human being. He was able to tell me that he loved me, and he called me brother. Today, I am the founder and president of a nonprofit called World Without Hate, educating people about the transformational power of mercy and forgiveness, based on a hope that we can build a better world. A world without violence, a world without victims, and a world without hate.
Rais Bhuiyan's nonprofit organization, World Without Hate, has been honored by several other organizations. He was the 2011 American of the Year. He was named the 2011 American of the Year by Esquire magazine. So I'd like to now welcome Rais Bhuiyan to the stage. Thank you. It's an incredible story. And the first question I had for you when I was watching this, I wanted to know a little bit more about the mental journey you went through in order to prepare yourself to forgive someone that killed two people and almost killed you. I wanted to know, were you prepared to forgive as a matter of principle, or was it something about Mark? How did you do it?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming today, joining this event despite the bad weather raining outside. You had the choice to stay home, enjoy a pizza and a good movie, but you chose to be here, so thank you very much. And thanks to Josh for making this documentary series. That shows power, that when you as a Jewish man telling the story of Muslims, that is called humanity. And once we stand up for each other, that's a sign of a strong and healthy society. So Josh, thank you very much for taking time, effort, and energy to do this documentary series. Thank you. So back to your point. Thank you. Well, I left home at the age of 12, went to a military boarding school. That was a dream. Not to leave my home, not to leave my parents, but to attend the best school in the country. So before I left home, my mom told me one very important thing. He said, Rais, from now onward, you'll be staying with a bunch of kids. And sometimes, some kids may be hateful to you. Sometimes some kids may be nasty to you. So when you are hurt, one thing you should remember, put a zipper on your mouth. So since then, I've been carrying a virtual zipper in my pocket. If I'm sad, if I'm angry, right away I put the zipper in my mouth and I take time. So now I realize why she told me that, because by taking time, it gives an opportunity to de-escalate the situation. It gives you time to respond wisely. So after this, several years after this shooting incident happened, I went through an intense healing process where I grew mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Remembered my parents' teachings, what to do in a situation if I was ever hurt. Revenge, thoughts of violence, and giving up in life was not an option. Forgive and move on. Or leave it up to God and or to the justice system if I struggle to forgive or show mercy. That was the option. And they also told me that, of course, revenge is sweet, but the God's reward of being kind and forgiving to his creation is sweeter. And that journey helped me. I took a time to control my tongue, and I thought about my parents' teachings, and I also thought about the powerful stories of mercy and forgiveness of Prophet Muhammad when he was brutally tortured in a city called Taif for preaching God's message. And also when he came back to Mecca with a victory without any bloodshed, he forgave people of Mecca. And I saw the beauty, the power, and the benefit of forgiveness. And that inspired me to forgive my attacker as well, because it was that upbringing, the Islamic teachings, and the beauty and the power of forgiveness that I learned in my childhood actually inspired me to forgive my attacker.
Did you feel like you struggled to find that forgiveness, or did you feel like it came pretty easily because of your upbringing?
No, it was not easy because, it's a human nature that once we are hurt, we tend to recoil inside in self-protection. Mercy, forgiveness, compassion is not the first thing coming to your head. We're most likely to take revenge or at least hurt the other person. But then when I thought about my parents' teaching that I should take time and go through healing process. So taking time was the right thing to do at that moment. And yes, of course, I was sad. I was depressed. I was angry at some time because my fiance left me, and I received more than 3,000 bullet fragments in my face, and I still carry them. When I touch my face, I can feel them. And my father suffered a stroke. The friend I was living with, he kicked me out. He said, I cannot keep you anymore. You have to go to a nursing home. And I was heartbroken that you are my friend. I came based on you, depending on you from New York to Dallas. And now you are telling me to move out. So I became homeless temporarily. So I was sad. I was angry at some point because my life was completely destroyed in my dream country. But then, I took time and I deeply thought about that either I can stay depressed, see myself as a victim, or I do things that will help me to move forward and get the control of my life back to myself, and I can slowly rebuild in my dream country, slowly go up.
And you felt like that forgiveness was a part of that moving forward process?
Absolutely, because if I was not able to forgive him, I wouldn't be able to move forward, because the sadness, the anger, the frustration I had in my heart, as soon as I made the decision that I forgive my attacker and I would like to move forward, it helped me to enjoy the life, to see the richness of life, and it helped me to focus on my education. It helped me to move forward, and it was the first step that I was able to forgive, but not I was able to mend or do anything for him. It was the first step of forgiveness that I was able to forgive and move forward. But later on, we saw in the video that I was able to reach out to him and try to mend the relationship with him.
What were your first conversations like? And how did they evolve from that point?
Well, after he was given death penalty, I was told by the DA's office that you have to move on with your own life. You will never make any effort to reach out to him or his family member. The game is over, so move on. But in the back of my head, I always wanted to find out more that what happened. I did nothing wrong. I did not even say anything nasty to him before he pulled the trigger. He had kids, 4 kids, and I was like one of his kids. How he was able to pull the trigger on my face, and after he pulled the trigger, he was standing and watching me. Was he enjoying? Or he was kind of confused and felt sad that I just shot someone else's son on the face. What was going on? But then I was told that I cannot make any kind of contact. But after I came back from pilgrimage, 2009, I decided that I will move forward. I don't care why I was told not to move on, to make any effort. So I started the campaign, and I reached out to his lawyer, and I said I would like to meet him in person. I would like to close the wound in my heart and move forward. Then I was told that yes, as a part of the victim's right in Texas, I can have a mediation dialogue with my attacker. But then I was told by the same people that you will be re-victimized if we allow you to see him face to face. So anyway, long story short, so they never allowed me to see him. But the day he was supposed to be executed, he put me on a list of people, and I called the prison system. They told me, you are Rais Bhuiyan. First they told me he is busy, you cannot talk. I called again. They said he is busy, we cannot talk. I said, how busy he is that he cannot talk to me? I'm one of the 5 people on the list he wanted to talk before he was executed, and I was getting ready to go to the court to give a last fight. And then when I called third time, because I did not learn how to give up, so I called again, and the prison system told me that, oh, you are Rais Bhuiyan, you cannot talk to him. And that time I realized something is wrong, because I filed lawsuit against the governor of Texas. I filed the lawsuit against the Attorney General of Texas, prison system, and 2 other parties. So now it is their time to take revenge on me, because I took them to the court. So then, again, I didn't know how to give up. So I called his friend who was in charge of everything. I said, why I cannot talk to him? What is going on? And he said, Rais, you can talk. He's on a speakerphone on a landline, and I can make a 3-way conference if you are interested. I said, let's do that. So when he he made the conference call, I wanted to let him know that I never hated him, and I forgave him because he heard this thing, same thing from his lawyer, from the news media, from different places, but it has a different meaning and value as well when it comes out of my mouth and he listened that directly. So as soon as I told him that I forgave you and I never hated you, he said, I never expected this from you. And I started choking slowly, and then he said, you're my brother, I love you. And I couldn't hold my tears. It's the same human being, 10 years ago, shot me in the face from point blank range with a sort of double-barrel shotgun for no reason. And he's the same human being sitting in death row, calling me his brother and telling me he loved me. I was just crying like a kid, knowing that he's sitting next to the execution chamber and I was about to go to the court to give a last fight to save his life. So he made me cry twice. That day he shot me, and that day I was about to go to court to save his life. It was very emotional.
Have any members of Mark's family reached out to you after that?
They did. He has 4 kids, excuse me, three daughters and 1 son. They reached out to me, and this is what they said, that we know you hate us because of our father's action, but we are curious if you'd be willing to at least meet us. And I replied that I have no hate against you because you did nothing wrong to me. And what your father did, that was out of ignorance and intolerance and hate. So I'll be very happy to meet. So I meet the kids, the daughter and the son as well. Unfortunately, the son is in prison right now for 14 years. I met the daughter as well. And I did my best to help them as much as I could. And I saw the cycle, the lack of education, full of drugs, lack of role models, lack of guidance. So it's the same kind of life cycle. And I told them that you lost your father, but you got an uncle. And if there's anything I can do to help you, my doors are always open. And they reached out to me.
So, Rais, I know you've been doing a lot of work to combat misunderstanding and hate since then. And I want to share another story from the Secret Lives of Muslims that I think speaks to that very powerfully. So it features a man named Richard, or Mac McKinney. Take a listen.
I get a knock at the door and hear 2 guys in a suit. I'm from the FBI. The first thing I have to say is, what took you guys so long? I told them the truth. I was going to make my own IED, and I was going to set across the Islamic Center over in a bank's parking lot, and I was going to dial it in and just watch the show. Growing up, I saw a movie and it was Rambo. Rambo was tough, respected. He had intestinal fortitude. I said, that's what I want to do. I went off and joined the Marine Corps. I wanted the action. I was going to be a Marine, and that's all I was going to be, and that was enough. I think the worst things that I have seen is dead children. I had to suck it up. I had to be there for my guys. I've hurt a lot of people.
When you came back, I want you to give me a window into your state of mind at that time.
One time, my wife and I went to a department store, and I saw in the distance these 2 women in black burqas in my store. I cried as I prayed for enough strength to go over there and break both their necks. I was just angry. I was just full of hate, and it just fed off itself. At that point, I was drinking a half gallon of vodka every 2 days. I had devised a plan, create my own IED, homemade bomb, and I was going to set it off right outside the Muncie Islamic Center. 200 plus killed or injured. That was the plan. I saw an opportunity to do one last thing for my country. This was my rationale. I knew I would end up in a federal prison with a needle in my arm. I didn't care. My hatred of Islam. It was the only thing that was keeping me alive. So one day my daughter comes home, 2nd grade maybe. She was telling me about this little boy who sat across from her. His mom came to get him. She said she had scarves on her and she had a dress all the way down to her feet and you couldn't see her on nothing but her eyeballs. At that point, I snapped. Started spewing things out of my mouth that should never be said in front of children or anything. She didn't say anything. It was the look on her face. I remember my daughter looking at me like I was absolutely the craziest person on the face of the earth. She was my little buddy. Yeah, she used to say we were road dogs. I know I saw it in her eyes. I made her question that love. And that's when the light bulb came on. I decided to give the people of this community one more chance. So I went to the Islamic Center, see a gentleman in the shoe room taking off his shoes. He looks at me and he smiles. He said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I want you to teach me about Islam." So he went and he gave me a Quran. Read this, come back when you have questions. So I did. And I would see things in the book. I'd be like, there it is. I got them right there. Explain that to me. And they would. This was a kind of awakening. Long story short, 8 weeks after that first day I stepped into the Islamic Center, I became a Muslim. I'm a Muslim, a veteran, and a proud American. I had learned that I was completely wrong about everything that I felt. You know, Judaism had a message, Christianity had a message, Islam had a message. Funny thing is, though, it was the same message. It was about peace, and it was about love.
Please join me in welcoming Mr. McKinney.
My big thing is now to stop the hate.
Nothing good has ever come out of hatred.
Whatever I get, I had coming. But if I can stop somebody else on the path of non-forgiveness, I won.
Mac McKinney is a veteran from Muncie, Indiana. He's currently helping homeless veterans in his hometown. I'd like to invite Mac McKinney to join us on the stage now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about, you were initially excited, as you mentioned in the video, to enlist in the Marine Corps. Could you just tell us a little bit about your adjustment to civilian life after service?
Well, I was in Panama in '89, Desert Shield, Desert Storm in 1991, and Somalia in '92, '93. And I decided to get out of the Marine Corps and try that civilian thing. That was not good. Of course, you know, the drinking and everything else that goes along with it. I walked off a job site and right into the Army recruiter's office and asking, when's the bus leave? And so I ended up retiring from the Army, but I still claim the Marine Corps because, you know. But it was hard then. Well, let's put it was impossible then. It's hard now, but not as hard. Yeah.
Do you feel like that time shaped your view of Muslims at all?
You know, I'm often asked, and actually this is the most common question, is what caused all that hatred? Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, I says, I don't know. But once I really thought about it, I really tried to narrow it down, I came up with the fact that the whole thing about me being in the military is that I wanted to die. Because here in America, if you go off to combat, and you come back in a flag-draped coffin, no matter what you did in your past, you will forever be known as a hero, period. And that was my destiny, or so I thought. That got taken away. I was caught up in an explosion in Iraq in '06, and the military says, nah, you got to go. And so they medically retired me. So that destiny was gone. I had nothing. And so that was the anger. I decided I'll make my own war. Common enemy, Islam. And so I started devising the plan over time. Nothing real quick. I didn't want to do anything quick. I wanted to do it just piece by piece, and I got it all together. And then the incident with my daughter happened.
So I do want to go back to that moment, because that moment you were essentially prepared to die and possibly be arrested and possibly be executed for a hate crime. Mm-hmm. But it was that look from your daughter that really just sent you into a tailspin. Can I ask what went through your mind at that moment? I mean, you talked a little bit about it in the video, but beyond the video, what was it about your daughter's look?
Well, and this goes out to every father in the audience. And Josh, you have a daughter now, and as she gets older, you'll understand even more. The bond between a daughter and a father is something that's just, you can't really describe it. And she's not my biological daughter. I adopted her. I've been in her life since she was 4. She's now 15. So please pray for me, because she's a teenager. It was just, we were so tight back then. And she even knew that I was not her biological father. Just a few years ago, she asked me to adopt her, so I did. But we were that close. We were buddies, and to get that from my daughter, the one person I knew that no matter what, I mean, I've been married 4 times, so I know wives come and go. But your kids are your kids, you know. And yeah, I got jokes. Okay. So you know, and that was, it just hit me so hard. So it just made me want to look for something else.
And what's your relationship like with your family now, since you've become a Muslim?
My wife or my extended family?
Well, let's start with your daughter.
Okay.
What's your relationship like with her?
Well, like I said, she's a teenager, so she no longer has time for dad, and that's okay. I understand. But I mean, we're still good. She knows that I'm there for her, you know, and that's really all it means. You know, plus, she wants me to buy her a car, so. Yeah. But my wife at first, this was real funny because the whole thing was nobody knew what I had planned. Anybody that knew me knew that I hated Muslims. I mean, with a passion. I actually used the reference, I saw Islam as a cancer in society, and I wanted to be the surgeon. And I started going to the mosque. I started reading the Quran, and my wife is like freaking out because she knows I don't like Muslims. She had no idea what I had planned. Nobody did. It was all on me. And so when I come home and said, hey, I took Shahada, and she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I became a Muslim. So she just started flipping out. And she said, well, I can tell you right now that I'm not covering my hair. I don't care. I said, you're not a Muslim. I wouldn't expect you to. And she says, and another thing, if you want more than one wife, I'm not going to be one of them. Again, you know, maybe I'm just weak, but I can only handle one. So, but 4 years later, she ended up becoming a Muslim. My parents, on the other hand, my mom had passed, and my dad and my stepmom, I was not allowed back in the house for the longest time, till this video came out. It was released to CBS Sunday Morning, which took me by surprise because it's an internet thing. It's supposed to be on the internet. And Josh called me up and told me, hey, listen, it's going to be on CBS Sunday Morning. So I said, well, I guess I better call my parents. Out of respect. I didn't want them to see somebody on the street and say, hey, I seen your son. What is his deal? And I just didn't want that slap him in the face. So I told him about it. After the video aired, about a half hour later, my stepmom calls me, crying. And she apologized and said, we had no idea what you were going through. And we want you to know that you're welcome in this house just as you are. So now, family farther than that, I can't really say. It's hard to tell. But
Josh, I'm actually curious, when you called up Mac, what was the first question you had for him? Or what were you curious to know about his story? What did you ask him that you can ask him on stage now?
Well, first of all, the way we found that story was there was an article in some small paper, and I just couldn't believe that the story had never gone further than that. And so that was the big thing. I was like, wow, this is an amazing story, and it's inspiring, and no one knows it. So I was sort of wondering how that could be. And I think it's because Mac, I've got the sense you had sort of hesitancy about sharing it too much, but now there's no going back. I mean, I wanted to know, like all these stories, like how do you change? How do you have that kind of seismic shift in your life?
Yeah.
And that kind of story really intrigues me. So I really delved into that with you, I think, a lot.
Yeah, and I know 8 weeks, really, come on, that's, wow. That's not even a full college semester. And when I had read the Quran and I went back and I got to meet these people and I got to talk to them and spend time with them, and they explained things, and when it came to the Quran, it made sense to me. There's really not any other way I can talk about it, you know. Of course, I've read the Bible. I was never really a Christian, but I knew about Christianity, of course, growing up white in America, you know. As a sister had said, you know, it's what we do. And I've read the Bible. There's no atheist in a foxhole, right? But it never really made sense to me. The Quran did. Which in itself is kind of weird, because the similarities between the two is, you know, unless you've read the Quran, you really would not understand what I'm saying, but there's a lot of similarities. But it just made sense. It opened me up. And when I went back to the Islamic Center the final time, I said, I want to take Shahada. And they're like, what? They actually tried to talk me out of it. Tried to tell me, hey, it's only been 8 weeks. Come on, you know, just maybe you should read some more, study some more. I said, nope, this is what I need to do. And so I did. And it changed my life in a lot of ways. All for the good. It's brought some hardship in a way, just because it's not the social norm. Which I'm not really even sure I even understand what that is anymore. But it has got me, it has taken me to a place where I look at things different. Whereas before, I had all these thoughts and all these aspirations. You call them dreams, you know. We all have dreams. And I think most of the people sitting in the audience tonight, if not all of you, have a dream of a better world. A world of coexistence, a world of getting along with your neighbor, you know. And I'm here to tell you, stop calling it a dream. Call it a plan.
I'm curious, did you, as a white, blue-eyed military vet from the Midwest, experience discrimination when you became a Muslim, and what was that like?
From Muslims?
I mean, for you personally, like, is it just?
I have gotten a little bit of discrimination from Muslims.
From Muslims,
but
okay.
I think any of the other ethnic Muslims can understand that there's certain people out here that unless you're this, and this, you can't be a Muslim. I've been told I can't be a Muslim because I have tattoos by a Muslim. So I don't know what that really means, but for instance, is I gave a khutbah, which is a Friday sermon, which is comparable to the Sunday sermons at church. And I gave this khutbah, and I had to pick something up from the store. I prefer to dress more traditional when I give a khutbah. It's just my choice. You don't have to. I just choose to, as you saw in the picture. And that's exactly how I looked when I went to the store because I wasn't even thinking. So here I am in Walmart, waiting in line to check out, dressed in this long white robe, kufi on my head, scarf around my neck, and I'm standing in line. I got what I needed, and I'm standing in line, and I'm just standing there, and all of a sudden I just felt kind of uneasy. And I start looking around, and everybody's kind of looking at me and turning away and saying something to the person next to them, and they were talking about me, and they were saying things about me, and I'm like, oh, that's what that feels like. Yeah.
And what did it feel like? What was it like?
I didn't
something
like
you
it.
just brushed off, or I mean, how did?
The old me would have wanted to go up to somebody and punch him in the throat, but it made me sad. It made me sad, but then it made me realize how much I'd grown too, because that was me. You know, so that's why I try to reach out to people to stop this hate. You know, and it's not just Islam. I mean, there's hate everywhere. You know, you got churches being burnt down in the South. You got synagogues being torn apart and spray painted all over the country. It's just, you know, it's silly, and it doesn't need to take place. But as a society, we have separated ourselves far too much. When we're picking each other off just because of our faith, how we pray. But I'm here to tell you that we actually all pray to the same person, to the same being. Call them different things. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of time. It's always had a different name, right? But yeah, that is something that has really, it's made me realize things.
Yeah. So I do want to move on to questions because I do want to open it up. I could talk to each one of y'all all day, but I will not do that. So the first question, how do we balance the inspiration and hope of hate to love with recognizing the realities of Islamophobia? And this is extremely relevant now, like watching everything that's going on in the news in Europe, turning populist. So anybody want to take that question?
I can just speak quickly to the way that these films have been received. There is so much, we get so much hatred toward these films. We've had, I'm guessing, 20 or 30,000 hateful comments on the series, especially the films about women in hijab. Like your film got tons of hatred. But I would say the positive comments have been, on average, about 2-to-1 ratio. So we've gotten more positive than negative, but the amount of negative is shocking. The one exception has been Richard's film. And Richard's film has had a 9-to-1 ratio, positive to negative.
That's so, why, I mean, is there a pattern? Why do you think that is, actually? That's curious.
I mean,
it's called.
I think I know why.
It's called white supremacy, right?
Well, he's white, and people will listen. People are more receptive, and that's why I'm really excited about his story and his film, because we reached people with that film that we could not reach that Mona can't reach, because they're just not going to watch it.
Even the Muslim thing didn't. No, I'm just kidding.
I
didn't expect it to be like a 9.
I mean, I think it was
such a different thing.
I think it was the ultimate Trojan horse. You know, and it's been incredible. I mean, more than 10 million people have watched it, so it's really.
So you got me beat, huh?
It's a competition now.
Not by much.
battle.
Not by much.
So I can't rap.
Yeah, actually, you three are 3 of the most popular films by far of the series. Yeah.
But I want to say that. Thank you. Mona hit it on the head. White privilege. I don't deny it. Matter of fact, I welcome it because it's given me that opportunity. I have white privilege, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it to get beyond where they can't.
My husband calls it a currency. He calls his white privilege a currency that he can invest in the economy of love. And I kind of wish he were here sitting so he can talk about it, but he's home with the kids just to dispel all the myths and whatever. He's feeding them and putting them to bed. And this weekend I was in San Francisco and he was with the kids, so it was cute. And we're like, oh yeah, look who's oppressed. But you know, I really love the way he talks about it as a currency that he holds this generational wealth that others don't hold. He holds this privilege as a heterosexual, educated, white, blue-eyed, red-headed male, 6 feet tall from Cambridge, Mass, from old families, you know, and he holds this privilege of coming from a half Christian, half Jewish family. So having sort of like an understanding of what it is to be in this world, and he you know, he says that we have to use that privilege that God has given us. That it's not an accident, you know, if you're white or if you're black or whatever, that none of that is an accident, that all of it is a gift and that you have to use it to make this world more beautiful. He's cute. Isn't that cute, right?
Y'all are cute. Can I ask you something before I do want to get to the next question, but just having worked on this series, and I know you came into this with an open mind, but is there anything that you felt you really learned or just really opened your eyes while doing this series, something that completely changed preconceived notions that you've had before?
I mean, I'm still learning every day. I mean, like I've gotten to meet so many cool people through this series, and it's completely changed my view. I was raised, you know, I told you about the mini UN, but I also was raised in like a Jewish community where there was people said things that were really Islamophobic, and especially against Arabs. And I grew up with that too, and that had to be undone. And what better way than to do a series where you're hanging out with cool Muslim people.
Rais, can you, I'm going to take this top question. Can you speak to what compels you to do so much emotional labor on behalf of white supremacists, and what inner resources enable you to do it? That question's from Caitlin, so thank you.
Well, that's a very powerful and good question. From my experience, I have seen that, you know, the people who chose to lead a life like that, you know, full of hate, intolerance, and violence, actually they are also a victim of their own environment. And the best way to make a difference is to change that environment. And we can change that environment through love, through respect, understanding, and acceptance. If we hate them because they hate us, if we neglect them, if we just ignore them, that these are the law of the law, we don't have time for them, you're just putting a Band-Aid on a big scar, and it's never going to be solved. The way it will be solved, this is the only way this to be solved is through kindness, through respect, through love and understanding. And that's what I showed to my attacker. Even though he never apologized, he never said sorry, he never even said anything to us. And that's why it was so intriguing, it was so powerful, that he never expected anything from us. But then now here, the victims and the family members, they forgave him. and they show him respect, they showed him love, and opposite of hate and intolerance. And that's why he was able to tell me brother, and he was able to tell me he loved me. So what I learned from this journey, that, and also talking to a lot of people, that they are also victim of their environment, and they don't want to live a life like that. They want to get beyond that hate and prejudice and intolerance, but many of them don't know how to do that. And they look at us, people like you, people like us, that you are so privileged, so educated, you are so blessed. Why don't you do something for us? But they cannot say it loudly in public. I visited so many small towns across America, very rural place where you'll never go. But I went to give a talk at a school or maybe at a town hall. And when I talked to people, they all said the same thing, that we don't want to live a life like this. We're looking for change. And we are tired of living in fear, stressed, and confused. But we want to get beyond, but we don't know how. And that's why I'm about to start a new program through my nonprofit, World Without Hate. It's called the National Empathy Ride, like the Freedom Bus Ride. So we'll be going to all those places. We are partnering with Starbucks and American Library Association, and also Comcast to partner. Basically, we'll be going to those places where hate crime is rising, intolerance, Islamophobia, xenophobia, anti-Semitism is rising, and we are partnering with SPLC as well, because they prepared a nice map where hate crime has risen 226%, where our beloved president had a town hall or a kind of pre-election rally. So we are focusing those areas where we'll be going, and basically just open up the environment for a respectful dialogue over a cup of coffee. Get to know your neighbor and talk about the issues that are ripping apart the society, the community, the country. And one of my motto is make each other respectfully uncomfortable as we pursue common good and positive social change. So my experience, the journey I went through, actually gave me the courage and the extra fuel to fly with an afterburner, to do all this work, because I saw there's a tremendous hope in our society to lead a respectful, dignified life. But many people, they are victim of their environment and they don't know how. And I took it as an action item for me, and this is my calling. And that's why I also left my IT career last year to spend all my time behind this work to make people more compassionate, empathetic, understanding, and accepting of each other.
I also think it's a really practical way to just combat that echo chamber effect we talk about all the time, the fact that you're going to all these places. Like I imagine these kinds of events happening in my hometown all the time. They just don't. So I think it's pretty incredible you're doing that, and I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think it's amazing. Make sure you bring donuts
and a coffee as well.
Yeah. I have this question from Paul. Oh,
can
go
I
ahead.
just speak to the emotional labor piece?
Please, absolutely.
I mean, it gets heavy. It gets heavy for people. I mean, I feel like you're a saint. I mean, I don't know how else you do it, without getting tired. I was just talking to my mom the other day, and I said, like, I'm just so tired, of carrying this weight on my shoulders. And I'm a college chaplain, and often these kids come and talk to me, and the greatest challenge that they face is that they have to present a face to the world that's so different than who they feel like they are inside, because they feel like they have to be bubbly and happy and smiley all the time to make sure nobody is afraid of them, to make sure that nobody is ever feeling uncomfortable around them. And that is so heavy for a young Muslim to carry around all the time, to feel like they can't just be sad if they're having a sad kind of day, to feel like they have to pretend and perform for a society that doesn't necessarily want to see their wholeness, their entire humanity. And that's really heavy. But I think what you talk about so beautifully is that it's an opportunity to show up as your most authentic self and to do the work of building love and hope by being sad sometimes, and just being like, you know what, I am sad and I'm going to show up that way. And maybe it's going to make somebody uncomfortable, but I'm not willing to put myself, my body, on through that anymore, you know. And I often tell my kids, like, you have to feel your feelings. You can't just like push all this down, because that's what creates combustion. We don't want combustion, right? Like, we want healthy young people. So we want to allow people to feel all their feelings, to be their most authentic selves. So that emotional labor piece, that's a big one. That's a big one about being Muslim, being other in America.
Can I just add 10 seconds real quick? Yeah, of course. I have seen the similar experience with other religious kids as well. I mean, you know, once you go to a rural town, a small, small cities, I experienced the same thing there, where minorities, like people from Jewish faith or people are with no faith, the younger generation, many of them, they go through this kind of trauma, that the identity crisis. And the way I think that instead of just focusing only on a specific group of people, if you could combine everyone, because it's not just a Muslim issue or a Jewish issue or a Christian issue. I see it as a human suffering. And if you could combine everyone, and if everybody feels they have a stake in this effort, the ripple effect is really huge. And that's what inspired me, that I just cannot pick and choose that my work could be focused on the Muslims only, or on these African Americans, or this. It should be about across the platform for everyone. And that's why we are being so successful partnering with Starbucks and the American Library Association, because they see there is a huge potential as we are about to start this 2020 election season pretty soon, already started. And I'm afraid that, again, the xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-immigrant mentality, everything will start, rising to the top. So this is the high time for all of us. Make each other respectfully uncomfortable, because we have to talk about the issues. If we think that somebody will talk about that and fix it, and we will be just fine, then you are wrong. Everybody have to take responsibility and talk about everyone. If there is a human suffering, we should all stand up and raise our voice, not just when our group of people are attacked. We have to get beyond that mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get to a question from Pauline. Non-Muslims seem to have a hard time separating Muslims from the Islamic extremists more than with any other religions. Why, and what can be done to change that?
I was actually posed with that question, or something sort of like that. One of the brothers from my center come up to me and he goes, "Why is it that Americans can't get past 9/11 and see us just as individual Muslims? Why do they harbor such hatred towards each and every one of us as individuals?" And I looked at him and I says, "I have your answer, but you're not going to like it." He said, "Well, what is it?" "It's your fault." He's like, "What? What did I do?" "That's just it. What did you do?" Depending on who you ask, 1.6, 1.7, there's a lot of Muslims in the world, okay? 1% has been categorized as fundamentalists, zealots, extremists, radicals. They're being allowed to speak for each and every one of us. And it's on us to come back and combat that. Now, it's an uphill battle, because you're working against the power of the media and everything else, but it doesn't matter. One step forward will always be one step forward, no matter what you do. So coming out and speaking as we've done, and trying to say, no, this isn't right. This is what it is. I'm just like you. Maybe me more than my other two partners up here. Just like you. We just believe a little bit different. And when I say a little bit, it's a very little bit. Okay? But we as Muslims have to make a stand.
I'm actually really curious if Mona and Rais could respond to that, because we had just had this conversation about emotional labor. So I'm really interested in like the idea of your responsibility, like a Muslim responsibility, because I know a lot of Muslims obviously agree or disagree with you. So I'm just curious.
I would be on the disagree side if this were a debate. I think it's like the conversation around climate change, where often it's on the individual. Like, you know, if you don't bring your reusable bags, then suddenly you're the devil. And, you know, you forget one time and everybody's looking at you like you're crazy at Whole Foods. And it's like, I swear I do it every time. It's just this one time my kids were driving me crazy and I forgot. I'm so sorry. And the reality of the situation is that Islamophobia is manufactured in the same way that climate change has been manufactured by large corporations and conglomerates, and that the responsibility should be on them to change these situations. So I don't think it's an individual Muslim's job, especially not an American Muslim where we're just 1% of a population, to change that narrative. I think like an oil-rich country like Saudi Arabia, for instance, where all of the I was actually born in that country. No shade on me for that, but it was kind of an accident. It's a long story. You know, Saudi Arabia, for instance, has a lot of wealth, a lot of means, but instead of using that wealth and that means to fix that situation, instead they partner with people like Donald Trump to further the catastrophe of climate change, instead of to help remediate the harm that extracting oil has done from the earth. So I think they're very similar, and I think people invested in making money off of Islamophobia are the same people who are invested in some of the worst, like arms manufacturing, you know, like all of that is connected, and we have to follow the money when it comes down to all of that. So I think it's beautiful to take on that personal responsibility, and yes, we all have to do our part and pull our weight. But at a certain point, especially for young people who I spend most of my time around, that burden is too big to bear, and it's not their responsibility. They really didn't do anything, and if they're allowed to be their most authentic selves, to be artists and engineers and moms and dads and non-gender binary and whatever it is that they want to be, that's making the world more beautiful. Not by them being their most Muslim self, right? Like, yes, Islam is a piece of that, but it's not all of that.
That's a good point.
Well, it's something like jackfruit. How many of you have seen jackfruit? Let me see, how many? Or have tasted jackfruit? Only 2 to 3 hands. Okay, so it's like a jackfruit situation. In the US, 85% Americans never visited a mosque. 65% Americans never met a Muslim. So now imagine 330 million people, right? If 60% people never met a Muslim, and your source of information is Fox News, and your source of information is all those hate propaganda website, and they spend tons of money to crawl their website on the top of the, the search engine, right? And then once you click, you search anything about Muslims or Islam, you will see most of the time those websites are on the top of the crawl, the search. Right, so it's like a jackfruit that you never met a Muslim, you never visited a mosque, and now in your safe zone, you're wearing a pajama, enjoying pizza, watching a movie, and typing quickly, who are Muslims? And you see all those negative stereotypes. That helps you to define the Muslims. 1.6 billion are the same, they're all bad. And at the same time, when our leaders and some of our politicians come to the national media, national TV and say, not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims. It justifies your thoughts and ideas, right? So that is the situation. The person who asked me the question, it goes back to her that this is the reason behind why all Muslims are being stereotyped as bad, because lack of education, ignorance, and also laziness. Because instead of searching in the internet, why don't you go and meet a Muslim like what Mona and her husband did? Get a free coffee, free donut, say hello to them. See, they're nothing but a simple, normal human being like you. They are afraid of something, they love something, and they lost something. As you did or as you do. Just a simple human being. How to overcome that? Stop searching on the website, take some real effort. Go and meet a Muslim. If you have the chance, opportunity, go to a mosque. At the same time, I would say the same thing, that if you are a Muslim, go to a synagogue, go to a church, learn from each other instead of just typing, searching in your comfort zone, asking questions sitting in your living room. Go and face a question. And one thing I say all the time that instead of firing bullets, fire a question and ask for a dialogue. Before blaming, try understanding. Before hating, try empathy. And before hurting, try forgiveness. And if you want to change the world, be kind to each other and to kind to yourself as well. That will help not only Islamophobia, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, all the social issues in our society, because we're not taking the time. We're just so easy getting biased with what we hear and what we see.
I know we have to wrap up, but I do want to ask you, Josh, this question. Just Rais was talking about the media's role and kind of how, it's lacking, maybe is a word. What is it that you want to see? What are the next steps now that you've released? I know you're coming out with another season, but what would you like to see next when it comes to Muslims in the media?
Well, the current tally for our series is 56 million views, and that's exciting. We're going to probably do more, season 3, so we'll keep going. We're also working on a musical, which is it's going to be the story of Muslim contributions to the United States. And we're shooting that this summer. So
can I be in it?
Sure.
Okay. I can't sing a single note, but great.
We can auto-tune it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to do. This is one small series. It's 56 million views is a lot, but it's not enough. And we're going to try to keep going and doing our part. But there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you, Josh Seftel, for being here today. Mona Haydar, Rais Bhuiyan, and Mac McKinney. Thank you so much for joining us and spending time with us. It's so nice to talk to you.
Give us your email. We have a kiosk outside in the lobby. If you enjoyed this, we're doing more and more things like this. I like to call this a 92nd Street Y of Boston. Give us your email. We'll send you updates so you can be the first to come to programs like this. Thank you for coming.
Hospital in the country by U.S. News and World Report, and the Seacrest Beach Hotel Falmouth, beachfront rooms on a private stretch of Old Silver Beach, ocean view dining, white sand,